All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session on Speed Up Package Development with Scratch Org Snapshots. My name is Rohit Mehta, and I'm a Senior Director of Product Management here at Salesforce. Before we get started, I'm sure you've seen the slide many times over the last few days, but just a quick reminder to make all of your purchasing decisions based on generally available products and services. Also, I'd like to extend a warm thank you to all of you here in presence here at Dreamforce, as well as those tuning in on Salesforce Plus. We appreciate you as customers, as users of our product, and giving us all of the feedback you do. It helps us make our products better, so thank you so much. Also joining me today is my partner in crime, Dalip Berkey, who is also a Senior Director of Product Management on the platform team, and he works on products like packaging and Scratch Orgs. All right, so let's get started. A lot of you who are building apps on the platform are probably familiar with the application lifecycle management or the ALM process, right? This is the process that entails building all your changes, integrating them with the rest of your applications, testing them against customer data, and then finally releasing them into your production org. Now, Salesforce DX, or Developer Experience, consists of a set of tools, modern software tools, that help customers adopt industry best practices, such as use of a version control system, or using continuous integration and continuous delivery to deploy all your apps. Some of these tools include Scratch Orgs, which are environments that can be configured and that are ephemeral, and they're ideal for development purposes. You also have sandboxes that copy over production metadata and data and provide the production realism so you can see how those apps will work in your production org. Salesforce also offers bundling technology called packaging that lets you build bundles of all of your metadata and code so you can deploy that into your production org. Packaging comes in two flavors: unlock packages that are geared towards our enterprise users, and managed packages that are geared more towards ISVs, building for the App Exchange. Now, a lot of you have already adopted Scratch Orgs and packaging, and you found varied levels of success. We hear a lot of complaints about potential issues with using Scratch Orgs and packaging. So I just want to sort of iterate them, recognize what those pain points are that you've told us, and what Salesforce is doing to fix them. So the first key challenge when working with Scratch Orgs is that installing dependencies is time-consuming. Just with a show of hands here, how many of you have dealt with this problem before? Yeah, quite a few, right? So Scratch Orgs are built empty, and they are sourced with a version control system. And so setting up all of those dependent packages, metadata, and data is a time-consuming process. If you're doing this many times a day, if you're running a CI build, all of that time can add up. Second, all of the features and settings that you need to configure your Scratch Orgs with are not exposed in the API. So while Scratch Orgs have this promise of being extremely flexible and configurable, well, we don't give you all of those features to configure your Scratch Orgs with. So this can be a pain. Now, you can enable those features manually sometimes by logging into your org, but that adds extra steps, and it breaks automation. Data setup in these Scratch Orgs can also be cumbersome. Every single development purpose, every single development task needs a little bit of sample data. And if you have a complex object hierarchy, multiple relationships, that can just make it super cumbersome and manual. And then finally, figuring out which features and settings to enable in your Scratch Orgs can also be tedious. Especially if you have an old production org, you may have a bunch of features that exist before your time with that company, and now having to sort of re-engineer or reverse engineer and figure out what those features are is cumbersome. So there are two features that Salesforce has built in the recent past that are solving these pain points. The first one is Scratch Org Shape. Scratch Org Shape takes the guesswork out of figuring out what features and settings need to be enabled in your Scratch Org to match your production org. So remember, I'm saying features and settings, because the Scratch Org is still going to be created empty, and you still have to source them from a version control system. What you don't need to do is you no longer need to manually list out all of those features and settings in a Scratch definition file. With a single CLI command, you can capture the production org's shape and then reference that shape in your Scratch definition file to create Scratch orgs. If you don't understand that yet, that's fine. We're going to go through an example soon. The second feature is one that's been a long time coming, and I'm pleased to announce that Scratch Org Snapshots is GA as of summer 24. Now, Scratch Org Snapshots, while Shape lets you capture features and settings of your production org, Snapshots helps you replicate Scratch orgs quicker. So if you have a Scratch org that you've set up with all of those package dependencies, the dependent packages, dependent metadata, any test data, you can now quickly replicate that Scratch org so it can be used for development purposes, for speeding up CI, and also for reducing package build times. Now, just a graphical representation of what these two features mean. Traditionally, you've created a Scratch definition file and listed out all of those features and settings manually, right? With Scratch Org Shape, you can now point to a production org, or in the case of package developers who are building 1GP packages, you can point towards your 1GP packaging org and capture all of the features and settings that are there in that target org and replicate those features and settings in your Scratch org. So it's a seamless one command that does it for you all behind the scenes automatically. Now, once you've set up that Scratch org with all of the dependencies that you need, you can now replicate that Scratch org using snapshots. So you snapshot that Scratch org, the ideal Scratch org that you have, and now you can reference that snapshot to create other Scratch orgs. Future Scratch orgs are much faster. All right. Now, I know, again, it could be still confusing. I get a lot of questions saying, well, why does Shape not copy over metadata? Why can I not get a shape of a sandbox org? Why can I not get a shape of a Scratch org? And so there are some key differences to remember here, right? Shape and snapshots, they work in tandem. They're complementary features, but they have some key differences between them. Shape copies over just the features and settings. That's the definition of Shape. No metadata or no data, right? So you're still building the shell of the Scratch org. It's just being built more seamlessly, pointing to the production org. You still have to source them with all of your versioned metadata and data. Scratch org snapshots, the intention here is to replicate a Scratch org more quickly. So it copies not just the shape, but also all of the contents of the Scratch org, the metadata, data, and packages. Source org for a shape feature has to be a production org or that 1GP developer edition org, right? That's the shell that you're trying to replicate. Versus for snapshots, since you're replicating snapshots, it's pretty intuitive. The source org has to be another Scratch org. Again, the intention of Shape is to help create Scratch orgs with features enabled in the production org, versus the intention or the goal of snapshots is to replicate Scratch orgs more quickly. Dilip is going to go through some examples and some performance numbers to give you a sense of how fast those replicas get created. All right, so just to sort of summarize the pain points and the solutions, previously you had to install packages manually. With snapshots, now you can create Scratch orgs with pre-installed packages. You had to deal with API gaps previously. You still have those API gaps. You still have to configure those features manually. But now with snapshots, you can create pre-configured orgs with those features enabled. You may still have to deal with manual data setup for that initial Scratch org, but with snapshots, you can replicate that data setup more seamlessly. And then finally, instead of decoding features and settings that were in your production org, you can just mirror production shape and make it easier to create Scratch orgs. So that was a quick rundown on the Scratch org pain points. I'm going to hand it over to Dilip to talk about packaging.
Hey, thanks a lot, Rohit. A lot of partners and customers that use Scratch orgs and Salesforce DX also build packages. And while you all have really innovated on using packages have some challenges, package-based development. The first challenge is package builds can take a long time to complete. And this is especially true if your package has a lot of metadata or depends on other packages that are large. The second challenge is packages can have nested dependencies. You can have one package that depends on 3 packages, and those 3 packages can in turn depend on other packages. So package builds of the leaf nodes can take a lot of time. And this also results in a multiplicity factor where you're building packages many times. You're building many packages in a day, and these time delays add up, right? So we have built a bunch of capabilities to enable you to handle this so that you can optimize your CI. We have a notion of a fast build, what we call skip validation, where we give you an installable artifact really quickly without doing any validation. But such package versions can obviously not be promoted. There is the other extreme, which is the full build, where we do all validation, but it takes the most amount of time, but at the end of it, you know that you have built your package completely. And recently, we released this notion of an async build, which I think is a good medium between the two, where we give you an installable artifact, but run Apex tests after we have given you the installable artifact, so that you can parallelize some of your CI runs. We recently published a blog post that I highly recommend that you go read, because it talks about how you can leverage these different types of package builds to optimize your CI run. But we're not done yet, right? I mean, we're continuing to innovate. We're continuing to improve your CI flow. And with snapshots, what you can do is you can layer this. So while for fast builds, it doesn't make a difference. For async and full build, you can actually use the snapshot that Rohit spoke about in the Scratch Org, so that if you have packages that depend on other packages, snapshots can really help in further speeding up your package builds. Now, I know we've spoken a lot, so I want to do a very quick demo, and I want to be cognizant of the fact that most of the Scratch Org and packaging operations are asynchronous. They take a long time, so I'll show you slices of it instead of making you all sit and wait for a package build to happen. In terms of the demo, what I'm doing is I'm trying to bring together all the things that we have spoken about so far, right? The first thing is you have your production org or your packaging org, from which you will take a shape so that you don't need to remember all the features and licenses that has been enabled in the eternity of time. Then you'll create a Scratch org with that shape. And what this does is that Scratch org that you create copies all the features, licenses, settings from the production org that was captured in the shape. Then I install all the time-consuming dependent packages into the Scratch org and take a snapshot of that Scratch org. Now, this snapshot can be used for development purposes. It can also be used for package builds. And in step 5, I will create the package version by leveraging the snapshot. So let me go ahead and show you this really quickly. And again, as I said, I'll do bits and slices of it so that we don't end up taking too much time. So in this case, first I'm showing you the target org, the source org, from which I'm taking the shape. And you can see that this is the production org. And if I go to the Scratch org page in setup, you can see that there are two things that I've done. First, I've enabled the ability to take shape of this production org, and I've said that this particular dev hub, in my case, the production org and the dev hub org are different. I'm saying this is a trusted dev hub from where I can create Scratch orgs leveraging the shape. Now I'll go back here and create the shape. The shape creation is pretty straightforward. I'm just running a command to create the shape, and it says the shape creation happens pretty quickly. Now, I'm going to leverage the shape to create a Scratch org. So you can see here that I've used a particular config file. So if I were to go to VS Code and show you this file, all this Scratch org definition file has is the org ID of the production org from which I took the shape. So the Scratch org definition file is pretty simple and straightforward. As part of the third step, I'm going to install this package. This package can take upwards of 15 to 20 minutes. So it's a time-consuming operation that I'm going to optimize when I'm doing the package build. This is a package installation that is going to go on for a while, but I already have another Scratch org whose snapshot I'm going to take. So when you can run the command Scratch org snapshot to get the list of snapshots. Now I'm going to create another snapshot, a third snapshot, using the Scratch org that already has the package installed in it. And when you run this command, you can track the progress of it. And when you know that the snapshot is set to active, you can leverage the snapshot. The fifth step of the process is actually creating a package version, and you can see that when I'm creating this package version, I'm using a different Scratch Org definition file. And if I go to the Scratch Org definition file, it has the snapshot that I used to create the snapshot. So this in a nutshell is how you can set up your CI to take advantage of shape and snapshots. Now back to the session slides. Okay, so for the purposes of this Dreamforce demo, I created all this setup and I wanted to measure what's the kind of performance difference I get. And I think this will vary based on your situation, but in the scenario that I did, there was a 51%. It took half the time for me to build packages using snapshots versus not using snapshots. This is an unsolicited feedback that we got from Jason Lance. As many of you may know him, he was a former Salesforce employee. He's a huge advocate of programmatic DevOps, and he's talking about a 6 times improvement in his pipeline by leveraging snapshots. So highly recommend that you give these features a try. Now, in terms of best practices for snapshots, it's important that snapshots has to be used in a careful manner. We recommend that in the case of package builds, snapshots helps if your package really depends on really large packages, but from a dev and QA standpoint, snapshots can always help. We strongly recommend that you don't develop a dependency on snapshots, because snapshots takes you away from source-driven development, so don't depend on the metadata that is present in the snapshot. Build them often. We recommend that you rebuild your snapshots and you know how to do them programmatically without depending on what's in the snapshot. The few other recommendations that we have is, in many setups, you have teams doing parallel development, in which case you may be using branches, and our recommendation is to use different snapshots for different branches. You also want a mechanism to track the snapshot, the metadata that you have placed in the snapshot, because in the snapshot, you can install packages, you can set up metadata, you can have sample data. Try to have a mechanism of storing them in your version control system so that you can get to what is there in a snapshot by looking at your version control system. And finally, you can't daisy chain, so the recommendation always is to build snapshots using a fresh org. So with this, I want to quickly give you a run as to what we are looking at, like what do we want to do ahead. In terms of what's coming in 2025, for those of you that are ISVs, we are actively working on the ability to migrate first generation managed packages, second generation managed packages. That's something that we want to GA in 2025. We are looking at Scratch Org, snapshots and shape, and saying where can we take this forward. Like, what if we create some mechanism to script your Scratch Org setup? Can we make it easy for you to manage a pool of Scratch Orgs to give it to your developers? Like, how can you reduce the time it takes for a developer who's waiting to close to 0 minutes, right? So we'll continue to innovate in that space when it comes to Scratch Orgs. We also want to make it easier for you to work with multiple packages. If you're developing, distributing, managing multiple packages, how can we make that process seamless? So there's a feature called package bundles that we'll start investing in 2025. And finally, we want to continue to evangelize any cloud, any new feature. I mean, you heard about Agentforce, you heard about Data Cloud. How can we make all those new innovations that Salesforce is delivering be very, very easy to use in a Scratch Org setup, in a packaging context and stuff like that. So trying to make everything be DX ready and ISV ready before it ships. Those are some of the things that we're looking at. Thank you so much for all the innovation. Thank you so much for coming at such an early time on the day after the Dream Fest. And we would love to hear feedback from you. Most of the features that we spoke about, we built directly in response to feedback that we have received from you. So please continue to be voicing your concerns, your pain points, because that's going to fuel us to continue to innovate in this space. So thank you so much.